Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Meg Sullivan, and I'm the founder of Quorum Initiative, which is my big passion project focused on how we ensure women get a seat at the table and gender parity becomes the norm. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome all of you to Quorum Initiative's How We Rise Together Forum. This is actually our fifth How Forum over the years, one of our marquee events. And it's the first time we've ever done it virtually. So we're thrilled to be here with you all, virtually, given all that's come down over the last 15 months. The goal for How We Rise Together Forum is really to provide a safe space for reflection and exchange on the most important issues of our time related to the advancement of women. The pandemic has created special challenges for all of us. So hopefully, as we move to a healthier environment, it creates a perfect moment to consider what we've been through, where we want to go, and how we do it individually and collectively. We have some really fantastic content prepared for you. Today is our first session, and will be a mix of keynote discussion and interactive breakouts. We end today around 6 p.m. Part 2 of the How Forum starts tomorrow morning at, I should have said Eastern Standard Time, by the way, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And tomorrow morning, we start again at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard and go until about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. So we hope you will join us for all the elements planned for both days. As I was reflecting on this moment in time, and what really kind of came up for me is my unwavering belief that disruption creates opportunity, particularly for those who are willing to challenge incumbency and complacency. This past 15 months has been unique in the depth and disparity of disruptions. It's a perfect moment for significant change to occur. But as we all know, change only happens when many voices are heard and serious collective action takes place. So we here, the part of this Quorum, fabulous Quorum community, have an important role to play in ensuring this happens. To kick us off today, we will be hearing about leading with purpose, innovating, and leveling the playing field. And it's such an amazing honor for me to introduce you to our first speakers, two women who I admire greatly and who effectively and impressively use their platforms to encourage change. Louise Pentland is a senior leader at PayPal, and from the moment she landed there, has increased her sphere of influence, not only in terms of what she's responsible for, but how she has been instrumental in supporting both the growth and the shaping of culture of the organization. She is a lawyer by training and has expanded her skills to also lead the people function, as well as functions like communications and social innovation, among many other. For me, she is authentic, wicked smart, and fearless. Reena Sengupta is also a force. She has been on the challenge of pushing the legal industry out of what I call the dark ages into the present through reflection around innovating, using technology, and reimagining how they work, helping lawyers become excellent business partners as well as great legal minds. She created the Financial Times Innovative Lawyer Series, which has ranked lawyers, firms, and in-house legal teams around the globe for over a decade. For me, Reena is someone with endless curiosity. She's courageous, and she's innovative in her own right. So with that, there's no doubt you're going to enjoy the exchange between these two fabulous women. And I'm going to hand things off to Reena and Louise to kick us off.
Great. Thank you, Meg. That was a fantastic sort of introduction. Louise and I have had the pleasure of knowing each other for more than a decade. The Innovative Lawyer Series has been going for our 16th year. So So it's been a while. So anyway, I have the pleasure of asking you lots of questions, and I'm going to challenge you to surprise me, Louise, on some of your answers. So we've got a bunch of things to get through, and we're going to start off with purpose, which I think is a really interesting topic, because for as long as I've known you, I think you've always struck me as someone who had terrific purpose, particularly, from your days at Nokia. I remember seeing you across this table in the Law Society in London, thinking, "Well, she's quite sparky." But presumably, there was a point where, in your career when you were younger, you maybe couldn't always work with purpose. I mean, how did you get to kind of living and working with your purpose? I mean, how did that happen, and where did it begin? Was there a critical turning point when you thought you had to work in this way?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thanks, Meg, for such a generous introduction. And Rena, it's always a pleasure to spend time with you, even virtually. So, I think to your question, and I will endeavor to sort of rise to the challenge of surprising you along the way. I think. I think it evolves. If I look back, what was important to me at the beginning of my career, quite honestly, it was making money, right? It was like, how am I going to pay the bills? I put myself through university. My family didn't have any way to support me. And so, for me, it was my purpose at that time was to have a lifestyle that was different to the one I had grown up in. And I think that was my drive. That's where you get that sort of, where maybe it's always been in me, I don't know, but I have an ability to sort of look at a situation and find a way through it, because I think that's what, that's what kind of creates that grit, and that ability never to give up. And I think when you start, as I did, thinking like that, then I think your passions and purpose in life evolve, right? So what was I at the beginning of my career so passionate about? It's not that my passions aren't still in that space. I was very passionate about women, always have been, and I got exposed to that through the negatives early on in my career, working in a law firm where I was the only woman, and so I think they evolve though, and I think they sharpen as you get older as well. And so maybe it's a little bit of good luck, but I was able to go work for companies, once I left the law firm, which was very early in my career, because I just couldn't stand it. And I went to work. My first in-house company role was at Avon Cosmetics, which is a company that is dedicated to women, and giving them wealth and sort of self-sustainability. So it's hardly a surprise I landed there as my first in-house role. And from there, I went to Nokia, which was really about, giving people access to communications that started to change people's lives, or in some cases save their lives, right? So I had this awakening through that process that there is a bigger purpose, and it almost shouldn't matter what company you work for. You should be able to find that connection. And if you can't, then there's nothing stopping you finding it outside the work and leveraging your work environment to do that. And I learned that when I started supporting immigrant children, which had nothing to do with my work at Nokia, but it was really important to me when I became a mother, that I was actually giving back to society and to those parts of society that really needed the help, and I had the skills to help them. And so, I don't think PayPal, obviously, its purpose of democratizing financial services, its purpose around inclusion, you might sort of look at that and say, well, oh, that's so obvious and so easy. But that's not where we started when we spun off from eBay. We had to build that, and we had to have people who were willing to shape and evolve that mission and that purpose. And I think all the things that led me to that point in my career, I think, embedded my view that the purpose and your existence can coexist, right? So your professional life can be, I think, very much intertwined with the interests and passions you have. And the older I get, the more determined I am to ensure that everything I do carries that very direct line to that purpose and things that I care about.
So that's really interesting, because I think for a lot of our audience, they may be struggling between that line of being financially comfortable and also doing what they love and what resonates for themselves. So finding a path, I suppose, through that, you're saying that is possible and may not even be in the organization.
And it can be, it can be adjacent, right? So you take even this quorum initiative, right? For some companies, they aren't as committed to the themes that are around it, but yet they're willing to allow you to spend time and invest in these areas which are important, because then you can become an ambassador. And I think a lot of what happens with purpose is people are waiting for permission. And I think the thing that I've learned is, and I learned this, I think, quite dramatically, because when I became a general counsel, which was in 2008, there was a group who were actually looking at how many female general counsels there was at the time. And they came to talk to me, and what they said was the number of female general counsels literally hasn't changed in 10 years, and in public companies. And that sort of hit me like a freight train. And I thought to myself, okay, but somebody's taking care of that, right? And they're like, well, can't you help with that? And it was suddenly a big moment where I'm like, okay, well, I guess I could do my part, as big or small as that ultimately could be. I have to give myself permission to do that. And what's stopping me? Actually, nothing. And so I set on a path to start to be a little disruptive around, what was the designation and title around general counsel? Because so many women, especially women or women of color, were in the number 2 seat, but were never getting considered for that number 1 seat. And I had somebody in my organization that I was training and developing to become a general counsel, to one day be my successor. And when I changed her title and said, well, actually, she is the general counsel, she is running the show, then suddenly she started getting calls. And it was as innocuous as, really, all I had to do all this time was to change my number 2's job title, and then give them some broader responsibility. And I think that's where I think it's incumbent on all of us to find, what do we care about, and how do we find creative ways to go make it happen, even if it's not a direct nexus to the company that we're in, or it may be not their sort of, I would say, main purpose, but it may be yours, and there's a space for it in the workplace, especially today.
But it's interesting, because you've been innovating for a long time. I mean, I got to know you whilst you were, innovating in your role and broadening the role, and now you've got to PayPal, and it's an enormously broad role, and that's obviously very linked to purpose. I mean, would you say maybe starting and being creative within your role, even if you can't find that passion yet within the role, is probably the starting step, or the beginning step? And
I think it is. I think having been in sort of a quote unquote cost center support function my entire career, often they're sort of put out on the side and sort of said, well, they aren't innovative or they're not creative. And I've spent the last 20 years, with great joy disproving that theory, right? And in fact, you just give me fuel when I hear you say that. And I think you kind of have to, it's not indignation. It's like, okay, all right, that's a challenge, I'll take it. And I think there's just a way to reframe the issues and to look at them as opportunities rather than barriers. And I think a lot of what people struggle with is they feel it's futile, or they feel that it's not going to make a difference. And what I always say to people is, even if you helped one person, right, or even if you helped advance one aspect of a cause, that will have an impact. And so if you can do that, if you only have time to support one person, then take that time, because you will change the course of that person's life forever.
Yeah, absolutely. So innovation, I mean, what does that mean to you? How would you define it?
I think innovation is to me, it's an opportunity to look at a situation or a problem, and make it more effective, make it better, or to solve a problem people didn't know they needed to solve. And I think from my point of view, that shows up literally daily, right? And I think you can be innovative in so many different ways. You can be innovative in the type of leader you are. You can be innovative in solving a customer problem. You can be innovative in your aspirations as a sort of a mentor or a role model. It isn't just about, and of course I have an IP background. It isn't just about innovating and then creating a patent, right? It's really about how you look at a situation, or a set of situations, and create a way that just makes it easier or better or simpler. And I think innovation is in all of us. And I think the best situations where I've seen innovation shine have been in the sort of often the darkest moments. And I think Meg referenced that at the beginning, right? I think the pandemic has created a lot of opportunity for innovation. A lot of the silver tech generation will never use technology. Well, guess what? They're having tele-doctor appointments now, right? So all the naysayers, that innovation has emerged in a space where there was, no space for it to emerge in before. And I think those who seize those moments are the ones that I think thrive. I think the flip side is, and this is where we all have a responsibility to watch out, is, it can, technology can kind of create that, that certainly that impacts, when we're seeing it for women, where it can become overburdensome, right? And how we support and how we use that technology and innovation to support, I think, some of the challenges that emerge. I think that's where innovation could really help. Certainly, I think in women in the workplace.
I mean, PayPal, you've expanded your role so much. I mean, obviously follow you on LinkedIn. You're always doing something new. There's equality. There's so many causes that you have, and clearly, you're helping PayPal innovate. Just on the equality front, I mean, we're at a kind of, I think, a profound moment in terms of the diversity agenda. I mean, what is your take on it? Do you think all the movements that people have been doing over the last sort of 12 months, are they genuine? Do they not go far enough? Where do you think we're at on the whole equality agenda?
Look, I think what's been happening over the last, I would go back even, a couple of years, but it's certainly in the last 12 months, with whether it's equality or whether it's social justice, more broadly, I feel that it would be a travesty to not take this moment and make sure that we never go back to the way it was before this. And I think the responsibility for that is on all of us, because I think we've got a tailwind blowing us now, where we have this great moment and opportunity to start to address those issues, like gender pay, and the ability to have more flexibility in the way we work, starts to break down those barriers, right? I think that's what I think I hope will stay with us now, and the ability for women to get advancement without the sort of traditional kind of, you got to stay late and sort of suck up to the boss. Those things I believe we can move past. I think the watch out for me is, and I think this is something that I'm thinking about a lot right now is, when I look at the studies around return to work, and there's a million of them, and I've read as many of them as I can digest. What I worry about a little bit is if the people who return to work are not the men and the women, and the women are the ones that crave that flexibility, I fear that could be a startling setback, right? And so I think organizations should feel a huge sense of responsibility right now to ensure they define what that environment will be as we move into the next iteration of the way we work. And I think that's what I want to see more than, I think time always moves us forward in many ways. I think we're not at gender pay, we're not at gender equality in the workplace, but I think what's happened in the last couple of years is moving us that way. Everybody's still got a lot to do, but then I think we face the next challenge, right? And so to get out ahead of that, what are companies like PayPal doing? Well, at the beginning of the pandemic, I started tracking how many women were getting promoted last year versus men in our organization. I was tracking how many women were leaving the organization versus the men in the organization. And we track that attrition data, but I was slicing and dicing it in just a slightly different way than I had been before, so that I could start to see any trends early. And fortunately, we haven't seen, I think, what some other organizations have seen in terms of, women either leaving the workforce in a greater rate, or that their men are getting promoted over women at a greater rate. And I think those are, new responsibilities leadership needs to have. I think, in the sort of go forward lens of what's happened post pandemic.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we've been looking at the stats very closely as well. I mean, there's quite a shocking stat around how many women have perhaps permanently lost their jobs, not necessarily in the professional classes, but a huge number in retail, hospitality, and various others, and who often were breadwinners. And there are some studies that are coming out saying there's a net negative effect on women in the workforce, following the pandemic that won't be rectified. I mean, what do you think, that professional women can do about helping, women in other kind of sectors?
Yeah, well, I think there's no end to what we could honestly do. I think you can take we can take that data, right? And I think what certainly if you take the tech space, what we know we can do with data is so advanced to where it was before. I think we can look at, and again, this is examples of what I'm looking at right now is, one of the big barriers to getting entry into the tech space has been you have to have a college degree, right? And so what I'm starting to see and what I'm opening up inside PayPal is the opportunity for people to get access to roles and jobs at a high school without, once they graduate high school. And then give them a chance to have, earn an income and then decide if they want to go and get a college degree. But not making those jobs accessible is a huge barrier that I think we can solve. And so when you leave high school and you don't have a college degree and your option is into some of those jobs you just described, then what's stopping us from saying, well, why wouldn't we, go back to, when we had good old fashioned apprenticeships, right? Where you could come into any organization and actually learn the trade, learn the business, learn the skills, and then decide if you want to get a college, get some money in your pocket and go that way. And I think that would be, a very tangible example that a lot of organizations could look to do. And it starts to get to the heart of skill shortages that we know exist globally. We're certainly seeing that, I think, as a post-pandemic issue is, a skill shortage in certain areas. And it gives opportunities for, underrepresented communities who simply wouldn't have access to some of those roles to actually have access to those roles, which if you follow that through and you pull that thread, that ultimately should lead to those companies becoming more successful, because ultimately we're making products that those communities are using. And if there are people from those communities helping build those products, then we actually start to get, much more democratization of capabilities, accessing, products that might otherwise not be available. And you're developing within communities skill sets that they wouldn't have otherwise had. And then people can make those decisions rather than having limited decisions, which I think is what's happened and really highlighted as a result of the pandemic.
I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, we're thinking about PayPal, it's an online sort of payments company. It's becoming such a purpose-driven organization. It really does feel like it's setting the pace. I think you have an awful lot to do with that, Louise. But where is the drivers coming for that to happen internally?
Yeah, well, look, when we set up in 2015, when we spun out from eBay and we set up as an independent public company, the first thing we said in that first year and first few months was, what's our mission? If our mission and our values is to really create accessibility, equal access to financial services, and to lower the barrier, which had existed in a lot of ways for hundreds of years, where it was predominantly affluent who were having access to financial stability and security. If that was our mission that we defined, well, then if that becomes your mission, then then our North Star is inclusion and equality, right? And so that gives you the ability then to drive those agendas both internally and externally. And I think it's why why I think digitized payments become very relevant in communities where the traditional brick and mortar banks have left, right? Because it's just not cost effective. But that shouldn't mean then they're excluded from the financial systems, or that typically what happens for a lot of those communities is they get the most expensive access to financial services. And so I think when you actually break it down, it's much more logical than it might appear at first blush, why this is such a purpose-driven company. And of course, pretty much, most people have a mobile phone today. So you have access to the ability to use digitization products in a way that we never used to have. So I think it's also the perfect opportunity and the perfect time where I think, PayPal can really drive that democratization in a way that I think even 10 years ago would have been much, much harder.
And we mentioned earlier that your role's expanded there. I mean, how have you managed to kind of make such an impact at PayPal yourself?
Well, it's funny because I never actually, when I left Nokia, I took a year off, and actually in that year, that was the year I started really getting serious about doing children immigrant work, and found myself in federal immigration court representing kids who were looking at being deported, which would likely have led to a death sentence. And as much as we like to think what we do is important every day, when you're actually going in to protect a child who is likely going to, be recruited into a gang and probably have a very short life expectancy if they're deported, that puts a sharp edge on, what really matters in terms of what you can do and how you can change somebody's life. And so because I did that for about a year, while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I got some great advice from my mentor, which was, don't find the company like Nokia. Go be in a company where you can influence the leadership and sort of help shape that culture. And that was sort of, again, that was the permission to act. That was my license to act and find a company that would allow that. And so, when I was interviewing, in fact, I had been interviewing with eBay first, and then they said also go interview with PayPal. And I'm like, well, I don't have a financial services background. Don't worry about that. And I met with the CEO, Dan Schulman, and And he painted his vision for me, which was this vision that I sort of outlined a few minutes ago. And I was like, okay, where do I sign? Because it was so in tune with what I felt like. I was debating, should I go work in a nonprofit at the time, because I really was craving that need to give back. And so, he convinced me that actually we could have more impact in a for-profit environment than a not-for-profit environment. And it really does come down to leadership and vision. And I think if you have that great combination, and we do with our CEO, I mean, he comes with like an endless supply of those things, then I really do think it gets the best out of people. And then, when I sort of, lie awake at night and I think about what could we do for our employees, and I go to him and I say, well, what if we did this? I know I'm not going to be like, what are you thinking? We can't afford that. Like, he's going to be like, okay, that's an interesting idea. Go figure out how we would do that. Right. And when you have that type of culture, it allows people to really come in with, brilliant ideas. And and it's what has evolved our culture in the last 5 years. And so I think that sort of permission and that ability to really expand the creativity for people in a very safe and comfortable environment where you're not ridiculed, where you're not feeling like it's not going to be received as a good idea, surfaces some of the best ideas we've run with, right? And why we've really taken a leadership position in things like employee stakeholder capitalism, because we say employees are our number one constituent, and if they're happy, then our customers and our investors will be happy. And it used to be the other way around, right? Yeah. And so how do we actually come up with ideas for that? Well, we open it up and we say, look, our own employees, suffer with, financial burden. How do we help them first? And one of my team members was like, okay, well, we should look at healthcare benefits. Okay, great, let's look at that. And so we start looking at that, and we're able to do things with that creativity. And I think all of that sort of sprinkles and multiplies when people feel that that's the type of culture they're in. And I think that's what we've been driving here. And it starts at the top. It starts with a vision. It starts with leadership. And it starts with people who aren't afraid to buck the norms. And if you ever meet my CEO, and I know you've spoken to him, Marina, I mean, he is exactly that personified, right? And I think that's what, to me, I never used to believe in the saying that one leader can really drive change. I believe in that now. And I think that leader can drive an army of change agents. And I think that's what I've seen happen at PayPal.
I mean, sort of last question, I think we're running out of time, but I mean, we're talking about how we rise, and we're talking about being able to make an impact. And I mean, yes, and talking to your CEO who thinks you're amazing, who sees you as his inspiration, as well. So, but what advice would you give to everyone about how they can, find those reserves, I think, to make an impact? What's the actions that they can take to become impactful? I mean, you had your year that kind of obviously was a very defining moment and a chance to take a step out. But what if you're still in the groove of working and you haven't been able to take that step back? And how can people get that resource to have an impact?
Well, and look, I would say for me, it happened earlier. It happened when that one conversation hit me around, the fact that the statistics were so dismal for women GCs. So I think you can actually look at your sort of, your environment, your immediate environment, and say, what is happening? What do I like? What do I not like? And then what can I do about it? Or it could be about, I'm in a rut and I can't get out of it. Who's going to help me get out of it? And I think you have to start with yourself, right? It's a little bit like the airlines, right? You have to put your oxygen mask on first, and before you help other people. And you have to be in a space that you feel that you have the bandwidth to give that. And so if there's some self-care needed, you should start with that. And if you feel like you're either stalling in your career or you don't feel inspired, then take some time to invest in you first and get inspired. And then when you're inspired, then you get into this pay it forward mode, which is so addictive. You can't turn it off when it starts. And then I think the rewards start to replicate and they move fast. And so I think it just has to start with one or two little actions that you can directly influence, but be healthy first to do that.
Very, very wise words. And I'm just going to quickly sneak in one last question. What was your one big takeaway from the pandemic about yourself that you didn't know before?
That I can run. I took up running, which I thought I hated, and I think I sort of do. I have a mixed relationship with it, but it ended up being the only 30 minutes in the day where it was just me, because we were in a house with kids and dogs and cats and teleconferences for 10 hours, and for 30 minutes or 45 minutes a day, I just went out and ran, and I was terrible at it at first, but now I can run like 5 miles, no problem. And I'm like, wow, how did that happen? So if you know anything about me, you know I'm not a runner, and I'd never self-proclaimed to be a runner, but that changed it for me. And now that's sacred to me. That's my Louise time.
Right. Thank you, Louise. Well, I guess I'll be back to you, Meg.
Yeah, thank you, Rena and Louise. That was so great. I really loved all the insights and all the sharing and the great comments. I really, really made me stop, Louise, when you mentioned how we need to think about this moment and make sure we never go back to what was before. I think that's so incredibly powerful. And we all have a role to play in that at some level. I also think you're ending on the notion that we have to take care of ourselves matters a lot. So thank you for those comments. We are now going to move to our first set of breakouts and talk a little bit about how to thrive pursuing transitions and transformations ourselves. We're going to post on this screen that I'm on right now the assigned breakout rooms, so you'll see your name, and just if you go down the page and click on the little button for your group, that'll pop you into the breakout. There'll be a lead discussant in each breakout that'll just help facilitate conversations. We have posted the questions that we're going to talk about in that session, and your lead discussants also have them, so they'll lead you off with some of those questions. So I'm going to let us move out of this session, pop up the slide that tells you where you're going. We're going to come back here at 4:30 for our next session and our next set of speakers. So please head to your assigned places, enjoy meeting some of the other attendees, and we'll see you back here at 4:30. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everyone. Listen, apologies for sort of the abrupt end to the breakout sessions. We had a little bit of a technical glitch. That's the beauty, I guess, of virtual meetings these days, right? It's never perfect. So I'm sorry about that, because I know you were probably midstream into great conversations. That was certainly my experience with my group. That said, I hope you had you enjoyed the moment of getting to know each other and sharing thoughts around purpose and leveling the playing field and transitions and things you want to do now post pandemic. So I hope that was a useful moment of connecting and sharing. Next on our agenda is a session about how to create a path for impact. And I'm so thrilled to introduce to you two additionally incredible women. Is that even, I'm not even sure that that's grammatically correct. But anyway, two amazing women that you'll get to meet here. First, Avril Usuri-Sisk has a fascinating background, a lawyer by training, a retired judge, someone who has worked in the private sector, held leadership roles in the public sector, focused mostly on policy and even state level government, and now has moved into the sort of consulting space, helping businesses and government rethink how they manage risk and create impact for both stakeholders as well as shareholders. She, for me, is a dynamo, very purposeful, and a change maker. Miss June Archer is also a dynamic leader in all that she does, besides being a valued board member for Quorum Initiative, and we truly value her support. She has, in the consumer goods and retail sectors, she has helped many large, well-known brands, as well as some up-and-coming brands, thrive and grow. June is a master puzzle maker, helping companies find key market opportunities for growth and development. For me, June is total high energy, determined in making a difference, and caring, and I don't use that word lightly. So I think you are in for a treat with this duo. June, I'm gonna hand things off to you so you can kind of kick us off in this next session.
Thanks, Meg. It's great to be here. Avril, it's nice to see you again.
It's a pleasure to see you too. How are you?
I'm good. Are you ready to get right to it?
I am. Looking forward to it.
All right, outstanding. So, Avril, you describe yourself as a structure changer. This is your self-described brand. And as a structure changer, you've said you want to be broadly impactful and work for good. So I'm curious, when we go out into the world, the women here, the career women in this group, and we think about how we can do good in our careers, what can we learn from your approach?
I thank you for asking that. You know, I think when I say I want to do good or I want to make things better, I want to talk about my approach because it's not necessarily intuitive. It's not a linear thing. I'll tell you that I actively searched for a profession with a public service component. Attorneys represent others in making their voices heard, and that's the nature of advocacy. So it was attractive to me. I learned early to communicate well, to listen for what's often unsaid, and to be tactful and discreet. As a young person, I was complimented on those qualities many times by classmates and by teachers alike. Effective communication became very important to me, and it was a component of my success in integrated settings. My family were among the first African Americans to integrate our neighborhoods and schools in Walnut Creek, California, and in Irvine, California in the 1960s and 70s. These experiences helped me to observe situations, synthesize data, weigh and balance interests, and respond quickly in often extremely challenging situations. These are skills that every good lawyer has in abundance, and they've been necessary throughout my life. My parents were the first feminists I ever knew. They wanted me to be able to reach my full potential in every way, and they wanted me to be relatively independent. And pursuing a non-traditional career for women meant that I might not have to work in completely hostile workplaces. That's what they said. And if I did, I would have the means to quit and get away from the poor working conditions. That sense of self-protection was very important to my family. My parents and grandparents had been in difficult situations, and they'd had the experiences of being unwanted and really at the mercy of the whims of a manager or coworkers. And they did not want that for us. My generation, they wanted it to be different. My elders wanted more agency for all of us, and they wanted us to be respected at work and in the world. My parents particularly felt that as a Black woman, I would need the means to walk away from situations that set me up for failure, and that I had to be on the lookout for those and perceive them quickly so that I could make the decision to stay or move on. I understood that I had a responsibility to improve conditions. We had just come out of the civil rights movement in my early school years. And I understood that people were coming after me and that I had a responsibility, and I couldn't fully meet the responsibility if I didn't push boundaries. The boundaries I encountered were many, but my job sort of, along with the actual being a lawyer and being a good person at work, was to push boundaries so that I could widen the doors after me, widen the doorways so that more people could come in. It was not enough for me to be in the situation. I was supposed to change the situation so that others could do it. But I want to say that I don't believe it's necessary to have a job with a singular focus on public service and community building in order to do this. We can all push the boundaries no matter what our job title. Rather than a job category, it's more of an approach. How am I making things better? And I ask, what is community? How is my being in this position different from any other person who might be in this position? How is my perspective different or broader or more narrow than others who are also in the room? And I also ask, am I willing to face the resistance that often comes when a change agent is active? I've always understood that there are sometimes costs associated with being a structure changer. Mm-hmm. And I had to choose my battles to make sure that the concerns I elevated were worthy and that they had a real opportunity for impact. It was also important to be able to demonstrate to stakeholders how the structure change that I was promoting benefited the organization as well as the individuals in the longer term.
Well, you said a number of things that lead me to my next question, which is going to start with a quote from you. So I hope you don't mind. I'm quoting you here. When we spoke earlier, you said, as a defense lawyer, I was the least powerful person in the courtroom. I wanted to change my seat to create the outcomes, right? So that's a very powerful statement. So when you think about your career trajectory, you've mentioned being a lawyer, judge, you're a HUD lawyer, you're doing some additional things now. How does that trajectory really fulfill on your structure changer brand promise? Because, you know, each one of those roles, while they're connected, they've been somewhat different. So I'm curious to understand how we can relate to that and get some nuggets for the audience.
Mm-hmm. I have had a nonlinear career, and that's where all the fun has been. Mm-hmm. And where all the impact has been. I just want to share that. I won a public affairs fellowship after law school, and the decision to accept it was very consequential for me. That early opportunity was extremely important in my development as a structure changer. It was a deep dive into how public policy affects us all, and more importantly, how public policy is made. I was privy for the very first time to conversations with policymakers, business executives, foundation and community leaders, and elected officials in casual settings, something I'd never before had access to. And I learned much about power and how it is husbanded and how it is wielded. I was highly educated as an attorney, but I never had access to these ways of thinking. I think much of my legal education had been focused on task performance, being good at the lawyering. And it's sort of with the assumption that I would rise in a law firm hierarchy or something similar. Nobody had ever talked to me about influencing others, using power to achieve your outcomes, and getting others to act on your behalf, even when you're not present, in service to a larger goal. I was astounded at what I was learning, and I was also hooked. I had been looking for something more than the basic law career, and it seemed as if now I had additional vocabulary and the tools to forge the career for myself in both public and private sectors. I've been on this road. I had been on the road to being a lawyer, and I have to say that I wasn't really thrilled with the linear law career as it had been presented to me. And the fellowship expanded my thinking about what was possible to do as a lawyer. I was eager to successfully navigate my way in a world that was highly imperfect and in many ways unwelcoming to me. I'm sorry. I'll stop.
No, I was just going to say, so that fellowship was really a pivotal opportunity for you.
It was because it made me think differently about where I could go after graduation, because really you're really pushed into firms if you're in a top law school, as I was, and then, or judgeships and clerkships. And I really was looking for something a little more, a little more hands-on. Not that those jobs are not, but I wanted to be more impactful even then, because I didn't want to just do work given to me. I wanted to think about the work. And at the very early stages of a law career, that's not very possible in most of the settings. You're not really designing, you're doing the work. And as you advance, you figure out how you get more power to determine what work, how it will be done, and under what circumstances. But I wanted that earlier. And I think I had just a maturity about myself, knowing my gifts, that I wanted to do something different. When I had that public policy fellowship, it made me aware of the legislature. And I went to the California legislature as a staffer early on. And what was fascinating, the very first day, I was in the speaker's office and they had read my bio, and I was one of the, not one of the few women, but fewer higher ranking women. And the speaker introduced me and said, she went to Berkeley and she's brilliant. And everybody in the room kind of looked like, who the heck is this? Because I had been bold. I had taken a seat at the table when many of the staffers were lined around the walls. I didn't know the norm that new people didn't get a chair. I just sat down because I knew that, okay, I'm here to work, I'm here to produce. And I think he liked that attitude. And as a woman with that little bit of attitude, I would say, or confidence, being self-possessed, it took me a long way, because people then felt like, well, all right, he's saying that, he likes her. She hasn't produced one thing for us yet. What does it mean to work with her? So in a lot of ways, I got a lot of pressure. People are trying to pick me up.
Right.
I was told by one fellow 6 months later, well, I told you some false information and I waited to hear if I heard it repeated. Since I didn't, I know I can trust you. When you're in politics, in the legislature, information is power. And I had to prove myself, even though I had had a great endorsement by the top person in our office. I went on to become one of the first women chiefs of staff in the legislature. This wasn't that long ago. And my boss was a woman. She didn't want me. She says, you will not be able to talk to the guys. They're not going to deal with you. They won't work with you. And then I said, give me a try. I can do this. And I think that she didn't really expect very much. And she let me know that. But then I had to be super when I was coming into that arena. It's a 2-year session. The second year of the session, I got the job, and her former chief of staff hadn't done anything. All of her bills were still in the first committee. Well, I had to be super effective. I got the opposite party governor to get 11 of the 12 bills that I pushed out of committee signed. And people had never seen that. They said, that's not even a governor in your party. I said, but I know how to work this system. I know how to get people to come together. And as a result, many more women are chiefs of staff now at every state house, in every county. It's just that people didn't expect a woman to be able to go into the cloakroom and buttonhole people and say, this is a great bill. Do this. This is why you should.
There's a big takeaway there, which is that this fellowship, and I'm going to pull on this nugget a little bit harder, is not only a pivotal point for you, but it's something that we should think about, right? Because fellowships and internships and other kinds of programs that may seem not so straightforward might open doors to thinking differently about how you can pull your career into a direction that isn't so much of a square peg in a square hole. Because not all of us are ready to do that. Some of us do want to pursue avenues that are a little circuitous. So that, I think that's a huge takeaway. And obviously your success speaks for itself. So well done.
Well, I have to say that my father was very nervous. You know, coming from a Southern upbringing, the real jewel in the crown was the law degree. And the fact that I didn't want to do what all lawyers he had ever heard of had ever done, it frightened my parents. They were nervous for me. They said, you know, what's going to happen to you? And the confidence that they had built in me and the experience I had previous, that was surprising to them. They were proud, but they were also scared. They didn't know whether I would make so many enemies, or, you know, or make people feel like they wanted to stand in front of me. So I understood that, and I took that to know that I had to do a lot of work on my end to make people feel comfortable with me, to make people feel like I wasn't so threatening. I was a confident person. I was self-possessed, but I wasn't trying to threaten people. I was trying to make things better, and that can be threatening. So I had to make the message available to others. You know, you can't just run forward. You have to know the system and then tweak the system once you understand it, and then go beyond tweaking. When I went on to become a practicing lawyer, they were very relieved, very proud. They loved what I did in the legislature, and they were really proud of that, but they thought this was secure for a Black woman. They wanted me to have a law job, and they felt that that was what people would recognize because it was not off the beaten path. I went to the public defender's office, and when I was there, I was a new public defender in a new county and in a new state. And I noticed some, you know, I exposed that there was no interpreter service. Well, you can't try people without an interpreter. I couldn't serve my clients. I brought it up. Nobody did anything. They said, we're working on it, but I refused to plead people. I couldn't communicate with my client if I didn't have an interpreter. And I used legal media, the bar newsletter, to raise the issue. The chief judge was mad. He called me in. He goes, we're working on this, and we told you, da, da, da. I said, well, but we can't then continue to convict people, try people, when I haven't had a chance to talk to him and don't know that I can't defend it. And so that was the sort of thing that struck me. I did get interpreters on my own, but there was no system. And then if you get the interpreter, they may not pay them. So there's no system. The system was created out of that advocacy. I wrote that article. I had lawyers come up to me privately and thank me. And then I said to myself, but you've been here for years. Why didn't you do that? I was thinking, I'm new. I don't feel the heat the same way. And I also understood that it's difficult if your peer group is not doing something. But I was a new person. I didn't have those longstanding relationships that might have kept me from doing what I thought needed to happen. And so now the state has a statewide system where they have interpreter service and they pay the interpreters so that, you know, you can depend on them coming. If you don't pay them, why should they come? And I had to present that. You know, that to me was something fundamental, a constitutional violation, and I didn't feel like we were doing our best work if we waited to fix it. That was just one instance. You know, there were other things that I saw that, you know, where the clerk's office would routinely stamp people having violated probation after probation had ended, and I had clients that got picked up for that. So I subpoenaed the clerk of court. People were crazy. They were saying, you can't do that. I said, she has to come to court because that's the reason the sheriff can go arrest people. She refused to come. The judge asked for her to come. She sent a sub because it was embarrassing. I didn't want to embarrass her. I wanted her to work with me and she wouldn't. But then I got a global ruling for all the people in jail who had been picked up after their probation was ended to be released. And so that means you're affecting all of these people's lives. They've lost jobs, they've lost their liberty. And those are the kinds of things that got to me. And I was young, but I wasn't young in years. I was young in years as a public defender, but I was a mature person. And I said, we can't just arrest people by fiat. We need to have procedure.
All of those initiatives are ongoing, and so many of them you created out of what you just said, your sense of seeing things that needed to be addressed and making them happen. I don't want to just step over something you also mentioned. You're out there living your brand, addressing things in the world of what matters with people, their lives in the law. And you said you're balancing expectations from your family. That you said it, but you said it kind of quickly. Your parents wanted you to be a lawyer, a recognized lawyer. I think this is something that Black families culturally are very accustomed to. I know I am as a Black woman, and friends of mine, and it is not always so easy to really have your vision for what you want to take on measure up with where your family and your parents often feel you should be. So I want to acknowledge what you said and really put an exclamation point on that, because it's not an easy thing to navigate. So well done. I'm going to move to some of your work outside of the professional arena. You're a busy lady. You are very involved in a lot of different kinds of interests, and these are a few that you shared. So you've pursued certifications with the NACD, the SCC, and you have connections with Women in the Boardroom and the Leadership Foundry. You also chair the Arlington Community Foundation and the Arlington Economic Development Commission. And you're an acting board manager for Next Up Solutions. So what I'd like is a two-part response. Is there a common thread among these choices? And is there a way for women to think about structuring our avocational interests for impact?
I will say that there is a common thread. I remain curious and engaged in my profession and beyond. I had been a judge as well. I wanted to expand my portfolio beyond civil and criminal law litigation and move myself into becoming a trusted advisor. And so that's what I have been doing. I've done regulatory and legislative work, and I expanded into employee relations, ethics, and compliance. Beyond my career, I was interested in advisory and nonprofit board work. And so I was an advisory board for a hospital at one point, and I've been on boards for the past 25 years that are nonprofit. I'm still active in my college sorority and in, women's organizations of every stripe. I'm with the bar and with judges organizations. I think that the way I had to structure it, though, was to make sure that I was doing things that I enjoyed and that I was always learning something. I consider myself open-minded and dynamic and creative, and that understanding of myself pushed me to continue the impacts outside of my job. I want to just say that I preferred, after a lot of volunteering, I recognized that I preferred an official role, and I actively participate to have that opportunity to have the power to convene and to vote on topics of import to the organization and to guide the organization in a position of leadership. It means that I'm going deeper into the things that I feel I can have impact on and really doing the background work. I'm active in a number of community things. So I just think it's important for people to see me as a role model and for me to be a model to others coming behind me, but also to move the needle on issues that are important to me. But I would say if you structure your avocation to go toward impact beyond your job, consider what you're interested in and what you're passionate about. The level of involvement at this stage is real, and you can't do it well if you don't like it, if you're not truly engaged. I'm going to give a couple of examples and I'll talk more about what you can do.
Great.
The Arlington Community Foundation executive director resigned unexpectedly. And so I'm on the leadership team and we ran the organization. So everything that had to do with the organization, the financials, the staff management, all of that stuff, we did it. We also dealt with all of our donor outreach, everything like that. I was on the search committee. We found a new president, CEO, and then in that period of transition, we worked to make the organization more relevant and a convener in the community. So we didn't stop, but that's real work. And it is real professional work that you would do in an office, but I did it for a nonprofit.
So let's hold the thought, because there's a lot that you're throwing out. So let's make sure we get it. First of all, you're saying that you connected it to things that you're already passionate about. Okay, got that. You're talking about taking your professional expertise, but putting that skill set to real use. You said real work.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, we talked about this. So there's a difference between board positions where it's a position and it's more of that and less of the work. Can you make a distinction there? Because I found this to be something I've experienced, and I think it's just a very interesting conversation.
Well, I think that there are many different types of boards, and what you have to know is what type of board you're signing up for. I was on an advisory board in the past for a hospital. I also did the YWCA. I did a lot of different boards having to do with women's issues in particular. This board, we had a sudden retirement from the executive. So who runs the organization? The executive team. It's like in any role where the executive is no longer there. And so I had this experience in my professional life, and I was able to take it. And that was a major thing that the board needed from me. I was the vice president. Before that, I was chair of the governance committee. So I had a lot of understanding of the organization, but then I had to step up. You had to run it. So actually, go over with the interim executive we hired to make sure that our 990 is correct, to make sure everything is straight, and providing the signatures on that, because we go and make our reports every year. I think that what you have to recognize is that you have these skills. You may not have utilized them in your job, but you are utilizing them here. And if you have at one time had this experience, it stays with you. You can do it no matter your setting. And so I don't want people, particularly women, to segregate your expertise or to segregate your intellect. If you're good at your job, you can be good at something else. And don't let people say, well, you haven't done this before, keep you from being able to make the connections about, well, they're similar in these ways and they're different in these other ways. And what can I do? What can I offer to create a more professionalized nonprofit situation, if that's the case? If I can then serve on a corporate board and bring to bear the issues where I'm working with a startup now, what are the things that they need to get going so that they can build out their staff, they can work on the financials, and they can grow their business. I know how to do those things, and I've been asked to do them in different settings.
So the startup board you're on, you mentioned that you have a relationship with some executives there, and that opened that opportunity for you. But as a person with your background, how do you make your value known and clear in these settings, whether it's a not-for-profit or for-profit board environment? Because I don't want to digress too far on this, but I know that it's something that that we care about as a group. Quorum Women, right? We're interested. Some of us are board savvy, some of us want to be board savvy, yet there's a whole positioning around your ability to add value that's critical. Can you just give us a few insights into how that happened for you?
Well, I think that I had chosen leadership. And so people got to see me in different settings. I wasn't just one of the board members. I was an officer at several levels.
Okay.
And I helped determine the direction of the future of the board, the vision of the board. I also, that CEO that you're talking about, I'm chair of the Economic Development Commission in my county. Prior to my chairmanship, I was on the executive committee. This CEO got to know me and see me through this work. Last year we gave out grants, emergency grants to the businesses in our community. It was not as much money as we would have liked, $10,000 to 394 businesses that were small businesses. As of this year, 91% of them are still in business. And the majority of recipients were women or minority or veteran-owned businesses. We did our part to support the business community in this area. It's a regional construct, it's local, and it's also statewide, where people get to see what we're doing, and the ripple effect of business growth is felt in all those places. That's how I believe I came to his attention, because he says, well, she's actively serving small business. She's actively keeping small businesses alive. And what did she do? She helped design and implement. And then I was on the committee to determine who got the money. So I know the system and I know what we need in our region very clearly. And I have a deep knowledge of it. Those are the kinds of ways that I was able to add value. But I will say that in my community foundation, we have a pilot for it's out of our Bridges Out of Poverty, where we talk about unconditional cash transfer. Everyone's talking about that now, but we've been working on this for several years. We have 200 families in a pilot program. We have worked with the state of Virginia, and they have changed the rules so that the people in our pilot do not get the $500 a month counted against their eligibility. That's a major structural change that many states are trying to do. We can make a tremendous difference in these families' lives, and the data we collect is going to be impactful for policymakers across the country. Impactful work. That's just a couple of the things that I want to talk about, but I'm involved in things that will change structures for people, change the way we do business.
And it sounds like what you're also very good at doing is taking the momentum that you create in these leadership roles that you take on in volunteer organizations and using it to propel you to the next thing, or to put you in a position of being seen and heard, so that people trust. One of the things I've learned about the whole board opportunity issue is that it's very much around often who people know and who people trust, and you don't get that just flying in from the outside, unless it's a retained search for a board position, which is a very different conversation. So I like the nugget that I'm getting, which is stand up, take on leadership roles, be they volunteer, and have a highly visible deliverables, so that when you are ready, or when you're meeting people who are in a position to put you on a board for a company, they are bringing in a known entity, someone who's done something that speaks to the value they'll bring potentially to the board role that is available. So another nice segue. So we're going to move on to the last section, and this is a weighty philosophical question. So we'll give it its fair due. Quorum focuses, as we know, on advancing women by taking action for ourselves, for each other, and the broader community in order to create change. That's the essence. So what we are curious to hear about is, what action for impact are you most focused on right now? And how would you recommend to professional women what they can do to leave things better than they found them?
I love that question because I think that it's something that it can't just be asked once.
Mm.
This is a lifelong quest to make things better. And I truly think that the pivoting and shifting comes when you see that you have done what you can in one place and maybe move to the next. I want you to understand that I may not live to see all the changes I am seeding. And that's a sense that I have. And so that I can take risk. I want it to happen more quickly than it would when people say time will change it or will give everybody a chance to get used to it. I believe in that, but I don't believe that things happen without some kind of um, you have to push. You have to push. And I want to just say that, for the women in the Quorum Initiative, think about how you can say, how am I being strategic about the things I would like to see happen? What is the world I'd like to build? And what can I do to help it come to fruition? That philosophy is a guiding post for me because it means that in any given situation, what I do might be very different. But the thing that is a constant is that I'm believing in the vision for the future, the world that I want to see. I want all of you to ask yourselves, am I a placeholder? And am I adding value? Well, like what's different about the position now that you're in it? The people that had it before did it their way. What's different now that you're there? Can others see the difference that you believe you're making? Or are you moving so imperceptibly that people don't know you're a change agent? If you are not perceived as such, ask yourself, what am I afraid of? And what am I willing to risk to be the structure changer or the change agent? What are the outcomes that you want to see from your engagement? When you sign up for something, what do you want to have happen? Be willing to put in the time to do the strategic thinking about what you need to do to achieve the goals and who your allies need to be and what is your time frame and what success looks like to you. Think about agility, build in opportunities to consider the process improvement. For, like, I have a plan. Well, it's not working. What do I need to do? Take ownership of that and just say, well, don't say it just didn't work. Say, well, how can I make it work? What do I need to do? And consider your succession plan because it's important that the work to change the structure continues after your involvement is ended and is extended into the future. You need to be able to say that it wasn't just me, the structure changed and now things are being done differently because of where I was. I am interested now more in corporate board engagement. I think that I've had a lot of years of service in nonprofit field and in the government. I think that the things that I know about organizations, about talent development, about governance for corporations are really important and impactful. I'm particularly interested in environmental, social, and governance issues, and I'm building an expertise in that. And the next thing I'll probably study is cybersecurity and AI, because the technology change, we've seen it in the last year, is just absolutely sweeping. Companies need to know how to manage that. They need to think about where they want to be now. Okay, they're already here, even if they haven't thought of it. And how can they move to the future and to work with the workforce, not just bring them along, work with the workforce. Stakeholders are changing. It's not just shareholders now. We're talking about stakeholders. And so we have a bigger understanding of these impacts that businesses make. Well, that's a similar understanding to nonprofit impact. The nonprofits were there first. They recognized that they impacted a whole society, perhaps. Companies are not working in isolation anymore. They recognize that they impact entire societies, the way we live and work, our climate, our political stand. Not that they're political, but if companies are in favor of allowing people to vote, right, we then have a different business climate than if we're not interested in allowing people to vote. And does it mean a company will let people off in a state that is more difficult to vote? Will you give people time off to go vote? I don't know, but that has to be discussed, because those are the things that are bigger issues that companies are addressing now, and they are wanting to do it well. They are wanting to see what can be, and they are not really sure. The environment, is still being worked out, but people feel like they have a better handle on that. The G, the governance, companies think, oh, we know that, we can do that, but governance can always be improved. It always has to be updated. The S, the social, is perhaps the most difficult right now. And because of the work that I've done, I'm really good in all of those areas. And I think I have something to offer. Look and see what you have done. Think about what you have to offer. There are people, there are companies, there are nonprofits, there, whatever you like to be involved in, there are people that can use your expertise. But just don't be a placeholder. The world is difficult right now. Many women are having concerns about what will the workforce look like. It's dynamic and it's also perilous. Which of us will get involved in that?
Don't be a placeholder. That's a big idea. I think that's a quote for the future from you. So as I was looking down, I was sketching some of the points you made. You started off talking about how do you see the future? So have a grasp around that. You talked about timing. What's your timing? Are you willing to work on things that may actually outlive you? Or are you looking for something closer in? You mentioned agility. So it sounds like you are a master of that, because you seem to move very smartly and sprightly among some very weighty issues. You talked about succession plan. And the last thing I heard, which I'm just a constant believer in, education never ends. You mentioned studying new things. You said you're studying AI, you're thinking about how things are changing, and you're not just going to live in what you already know. There's always a way to expand. Those are some of the takeaways. Is there anything else you want to add? That's a very rich list, and I've learned a lot. I just want to make sure we've gotten every drop out of you that we can.
Well, I guess what I want to say is that I'm looking to create a world where everybody can make their full contribution. I mean, full stop, no caveats.
Right.
And so how can I do that at every stage of career, at every stage personally? What am I doing to help that occur? It has been a non-linear law career, but I want to believe that I have been consequential.
Mm-hmm.
And that I will continue to be consequential as long as I have energy and breath to help to create the world that we want to see. It doesn't matter that it may be difficult. The fun, now I'm saying fun in a very broad sense, is in the difficulty. People, if it were easy, everybody would do it. That's something my mother said. If it were easy, everybody do it. So find the difficult thing, enjoy the effort. You will have setbacks. It will not be linear. You may not get everything you want, but when you listen to people and you work collaboratively and you think about the greater good and the greater goal, even if you take one step forward and feel like you're coming 2 steps back, you still don't get discouraged. What I wanted, as I talked to women, particularly in law and business, these professions have to be different than they were when we came in. They have to be. It's not enough to be a great lawyer if the people behind you are quitting in droves because of the work setting, or they are, or the work is detrimental to people. Think about it. Every company, every lawyer defends their position. I have no problem with that. but I want to think more broadly about it. When I was a judge, I was in the position to change structure. As a PD, a public defender, I was not encouraged to do that. They said, just get them through, be a vigorous advocate. As a judge, I was able to make sure that we had mental health courts, things so that people could get out of the system of always getting rearrested because they're having a mental health problem.
Well, Evriel, I'm going to ask if we can leave it right there because
Mhm.
you've given us so many nuggets to think about. It's been phenomenal. You are the antithesis of a placeholder. So thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm going to shoot it back over to Meg to take us to the next session. Thank
Thank
you.
you. It's been a delight. Thank you.
Thank you, June and Evriel. That was just terrific. I too loved the Don't Be a Placeholder. And I also really loved what is the world I want to build. I thought that was quite profound in terms of things to think about. Anyway, we're going to thank you so much, June and Evriel, for your contributions. We're going to move on to the next breakout session. And just to explain again, we're going to flash up which group that you're in, and the groups can be found at the bottom of the page. I think everybody got there in the end, but it's all the way down at the bottom of the page. There's a green button to join. Click on the group that you've been assigned to so you can join it, and we'll have a little bit of discussion about what creating impact means for you, and then we'll come back here at around 5:50, 5:55 for just a few last minute comments, and we'll wrap up the day. So thanks everybody, and I'll see you in the breakouts. Hey, everyone. Well, welcome back to this sort of quick plenary. I just wanted to kind of close out the day. I hope you enjoyed meeting each other and sharing insights and thoughts around impact and around purpose and all those kinds of amazing subjects. I wanted to thank all of our speakers and lead discussants today. We are so appreciative of your contributions. I thought they were very valuable and meaningful. I also wanted to thank all of you for participating so fully today, because it's really the interactivity and the exchange that makes this community so rich. So thank you for that. I want to remind everybody that we begin again tomorrow morning or afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in, but it's 9 a.m. Eastern. And there is much more great content to come. So we really look forward to having you all with us tomorrow morning. And I thought to close today, I thought I would share a short poem by Alex Elle. And Alex Elle, if you don't know her, she is a writer and creative living in Washington, D.C. And her poem is called Rebirth. So as we get ready to close here, feel free to just close your eyes for a minute and just listen. Take a deep breath. And I will read you her short, beautiful poem. Rebirth. There will be moments when you will bloom fully and then wilt, only to bloom again. If we learn anything from flowers, it is that resilience is born even when we feel like we are dying. I just thought it was such a beautiful notion, touches on how we keep coming back, taking advantage of this crazy time we live in for a moment of rebirth and rethinking. So I want to thank everybody again for the day. I want to wish you an amazing evening. And I very much look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Be well. Take care.